every other source we've tapped. I've been awfully lucky there." "Don't talk like a simp, David. 'Tain't luck. That's your way of workin'. And because there isn't anything flashy about it, you call it luck. Why, you poor fish, there isn't any other man in the country who would have had the common sense to do what you did, to know that it would be a sensible move." "Some day, Eric," grinned Carroll, "I'm going to throw you down, I'm going to flunk on a case, and then you'll say to my face what you must often have thought, that I'm a lucky, old maidish detective." "Go on wit' you! Fishin' for compliments, that's what you are." Carroll grew serious again. "I think we're safe in eliminating Evelyn Rogers from our calculations, except as a gold mine of information. Which takes us to her friend, Hazel Gresham." "And Garry Gresham. You say he didn't want you to discuss the case with his sister?" "They both acted mighty peculiarly," agreed Carroll. "One of them, I'm sure, knows something about that case, has some inside dope on it. And the one who knew has told the other one. The affection between them is something pretty to look at, Leverage." "You think one of them is in on the know?" "Yes, I think so. And I think that their information touches someone pretty close to them. That's obviously why they pleaded so hard with me to call off the investigation." They're pretty good friends to the Lawrences, aren't they?" "Yes, with Naomi Lawrence, anyway. I don't believe Gerald Lawrence is especially friendly with anyone. But the Greshams and Mrs. Lawrence are pretty intimate." "And you believe that the alibi Miss Rogers established for Hazel Gresham is good?" Carroll hesitated a moment before replying. When he did speak, it was with obvious reluctance. "I hate to say so, Leverage, because I like Evelyn Rogers, and I took an instant liking to both Hazel Gresham and her brother. But there seems to be something wrong about it. I do think that Evelyn Rogers believed she was telling the truth, but I'm not so sure that her dope was accurate. Just where the inaccuracy comes, I haven't the least idea, but I'm not letting my likes and dislikes stand in the way of a sane outlook on the case. I am convinced that both the young Greshams know something more than they have told. As a matter of fact, there isn't a doubt of it. They showed it clearly when they begged me to call off the investigation. We know further that they are intimate with Naomi Lawrence, and we know that either Naomi or the husband, or both, are mixed up in this case. Events dovetail too perfectly for us to ignore the fact that however right Evelyn Rogers may believe she is, she may be wrong." "And I'm not forgetting either," said Leverage grimly, "that Hazel Gresham was engaged to marry Warren." "No, nor am I. It's a puzzling combination of circumstances, Leverage. A perfectly knit thing, if we don't. And so now we come to Gerald Lawrence and his wife." Leverage did not take his cue immediately. He sat drumming a heavy tattoo on the table top, forehead corrugated in a frown of intensive thought. When he did speak, it was in a manner well nigh abstract. "Gerald Lawrence probably lied when he said he didn't leave Nashville until the 2 a.m. train." "He may have. One thing which impressed me about Lawrence was this, Leverage. When the man started bucking me, he thought he had a perfect alibi. He was supremely confident that I was going to be completely nonplussed. It was only after I had questioned him closely that he realized his alibi was no alibi at all. He realized he couldn't prove where he was at the time the murder was committed. That for all the evidence he could adduce he might have been right here in this city." "Yes?" "The significant fact is this," explained Carroll. When he made the discovery that his alibi was no good, he was the most surprised person in the room." "And you're thinking," suggested the chief, "that if he had actually had a hand in the murder of Warren, he would have had an alibi that would have been an alibi." "Just about that. Get me straight, Chief. I would rather believe Lawrence guilty than any other person, except perhaps Barker, with whom I have come in contact since this investigation began. He has one of the most unpleasant personalities I have ever known. He is a congenital grouch. But he told his Nashville story so frankly, and then became so panicky with surprise when my questioning showed him that his alibi was rotten, that we must not fasten definitely upon him." "Except to be pretty darn sure that he knows more about it than he has told." "Yes, perhaps." "Perhaps? Ain't you sure he does?" "I'm not sure of anything. I haven't one single item of information save that regarding the one person whom I would prefer to see left clear." "And that is?" "Mrs. Naomi Lawrence." Leverage nodded agreement. "Things do look pretty tough for her." "More so than you think, Eric." Carroll designated on his fingers. "Count the facts against her as we know them, irrespective of their weight or significance. First, she is a beautiful woman, 12 years younger than her husband and very unhappy in her domestic life. Second, she was very friendly with Roland Warren. Of course, Miss Rogers' fatuous belief that Warren was crazy about her is pure rot. He called at that house to see either Gerald or Naomi Lawrence. We must admit that the chances are the woman was the person in whom he was interested. Third, in substantiation of that belief, we know that he frequently gave her presents. It doesn't matter how valuable the presents were, he gave them. That proves a certain amount of interest." Carroll paused for a brief explanation. "Mind you, Leverage, I'm not trying to make out a case against Naomi Lawrence. I'm only being honest. To continue. Fourth, we know that in spite of the fact that she is afraid to remain in a house alone at night, she suggested that her sister visit at the home of Hazel Gresham on the night Warren was killed. Her husband was supposed, according to his story, to be in Nashville. It is absurd to presume that when she let Evelyn go out for the night, she expected to remain alone until morning. Therefore, for the sake of argument, we will assume that she knew her husband would be back that night. If that is the case, we are also forced to believe that there was something sinister about it. Fifth, we are fairly positive that she packed a suitcase the morning before the murder, that the suitcase left the house that morning, and that 2 days later it mysteriously reappeared." "Yes," interrupted Leverage, "and we know that Warren was planning to make a trip with someone else." "Exactly." "Which makes it pretty clear," finished Leverage positively, "that Mrs. Lawrence was the woman in the taxicab."
End of chapter 16. Recording by Roger Moline.